Hi, I'm Mark from eReplacementParts.com. In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the lower motor bearing on a Porter Cable random orbital sander. The lower motor bearing attaches to the motor's armature and allows the armature to spin. Like any bearing, eventually it'll begin to wear out. The first signs of a bad bearing will be squealing sounds coming from the sander. As the bearing continues to wear, it'll start to lock up, and you'll notice a considerable loss of power from your sander. The lower motor bearing is easy to replace, and I'm going to show you how. Lower motor bearings, as well as many other parts, can be found on our website. Let's get started. I'll begin by removing the 3 screws that secure the sander pad to the sander. Now I can remove the clutch belt. Next, I'll remove the black sander pad housing. It's held in place with 2 screws. With the screws removed, I can separate the 2 halves of the housing. Now remove the dust pad housing O-ring. I'll use a screwdriver to get it started, and then I'll just pry it away from the housing. Now remove the sander pad support. I removed the sander pad housing so I'd be able to grab the fan so that the screw doesn't just rotate as I try to remove it. With the pad support removed, now I can go ahead and remove the fan. The 2 halves of the motor housing are secured with 4 screws. I'll go ahead and remove those now. With the screws removed, now I can split 1 half of the housing. Now I'll pull the brush holders away from the armature. With the brush holders out of the way, now I can go ahead and remove the armature. Now I can remove the lower motor bearing. The easiest way to do this is with a bearing puller. However, there's a very small gap between the bearing and this counterweight. If your puller will fit in between those 2, it'll work great. However, my puller is a little thick on the legs, so I won't be able to use it. Instead, I'll use a bearing separator and a vise. I'll place the separator over the bearing and then go ahead and tighten it up. Now I'll place the separator on top of the vise jaws, and I've opened the jaws wide enough so that the fan on the armature will clear and won't get broken as we remove the lower motor bearing. Now we're ready to remove the bearing. Except I don't want to strike the end of the motor shaft with the hammer because I'll damage the threads where the pad support screw goes. So what I'll do is actually take the pad support screw and thread it into the end of the shaft. And that way I'll be striking the head of the screw rather than the shaft itself. And I'll use the hammer to tap the bearing free from the armature shaft. Now I can install our new lower motor bearing. The bearing gets pressed onto the shaft until it contacts this washer that sits on top of the retaining ring. So I'll place the bearing over the shaft, and then I'll use a socket that has the same diameter as the inner race of the bearing. And I'll use that to tap the bearing into place. Now we can install the armature back into the sander. There's an O-ring that fits over the upper motor bearing and provides some cushion between the armature and the housing. Now I'll slide the armature through the field and make sure that that O-ring aligns with the gap in the housing. Now I can install the brush back into the sander. And I'll do this again on the other side. Now I can reinstall the housing. You might notice this little rubber bumper. And this just goes down in the housing where the bearing attaches. And again, that's there just to provide a little cushion to the bearing so the bearing has a little room to play. I'll make one last check of the wires and make sure everything's tucked out of the way so they're not going to get pinched. And then reattach the housing. And it gets secured with the screws. Now I'll slide the fan back over the shaft. Now I'll place the pad support back over the fan and spindle. Next comes the washer. The side with the recess should be facing towards you. And I'll secure it all with the screw. And again, I'll hold the fan to prevent the motor shaft from spinning as I tighten down the screw. Now I can install the pad housing O-ring. Now install the pad housings. They just slide over the gray motor housing, and I align the ends with the seam in the motor housing. Both sides, and then I'll secure it with the screws. Now I can install the clutch belt. First I'll wrap it around the fixed pulley and then around the pad support. And I'll rotate the pad support until the belt's in place. Now I can install the pad. A trick to make it a little easier to align it is to insert a small screwdriver through one of the holes in the pad. Then I put that same screwdriver in the hole in the pad support, and then I secure it with the screws. And that's how easy it is to replace the lower motor bearing on a Porter Cable random orbital sander. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give us a thumbs up and leave a comment.